Ada, for leaving my husband and stepdaughter stranded on Christmas when I found out he gave her my big Christmas gift. My husband M, 41M, is the worst at gift giving. We have been together over 3 years, and from the very beginning, his lack of enthusiasm for special occasions has driven me up the wall. After the first year of not receiving anything for my birthday, anniversary, Christmas, or Valentine's Day, Mother's Day was the final straw. When he told me I wasn't his mother, that cut straight through my heart. I was dumbfounded at his insensitivity, especially since I'd already been going above and beyond to make his special days memorable. I decided right then and there to match his energy, because clearly my efforts weren't being reciprocated. I remember stewing in my feelings for days after his Mother's Day comment, questioning whether or not I was overreacting. Eventually, I concluded that I wasn't. My husband's behavior up to that point had shown a real pattern of thoughtlessness, and his remarks cemented that. I felt it was time to show him exactly how it felt to be on the other end of inconsiderate gift giving, or rather, no gift giving at all. Father's Day came and I was gone all day when normally I would have put together a big lunch dinner and driven 30-45 minutes to go get his daughter A, now 16, so they could spend the day together. Instead, I decided to take the day for myself. I went out early that morning, leaving the house quietly so he wouldn't even notice. I remember feeling a mix of guilt and a strange sense of empowerment as I drove away. I wasn't entirely comfortable matching his coldness, but at the same time, I felt I had to stand my ground. He called me in the afternoon, and I could hear the confusion in his voice immediately. I was polite but gave him no extra warmth. No excitement in my tone, no reassurance. That's when he asked me about picking up A. I calmly told him I had other plans and that I wasn't aware I was supposed to be responsible for that, since nothing was communicated to me. When he responded with, "But it's Father's Day," I used his response right back. "You are not my father." Even though I'd rehearsed it in my head, my heart pounded as soon as I said those words. I anticipated him getting upset, and sure enough, he started to raise his voice, demanding to know what was going on, but I refused to get into a shouting match. Before he could really escalate, I told him to check the table and hung up. I had left a letter there, painstakingly written to convey just how hurt I was about going out of my way for him, only to get zero reciprocation. I poured my heart into that letter, and I wondered how he'd react. He called me later, sounding more subdued, saying he'd try to be better and work on it. That call ended with him apologizing, and I felt a flicker of hope. I ended up going to pick up his daughter during the week so they could enjoy a dinner together. Some habits die hard, I guess. For background, he drives big rig trucks, so the vehicle we use for everyday travel is mine. He's been better about the gifts since then, but it's more of, go pick something out and I'll pay for it. Honestly, I don't mind because at least it shows he cares about me getting something I actually like. He does the same thing for his daughter too, whenever she wants something. I do all the shopping for his family's gifts when it comes to birthdays and holidays. Still, it felt like I was the only one truly invested in making those special moments magical, year after year. Cut to a week before Christmas, and suddenly, everything felt different. I woke up to my favorite coffee drink waiting for me, and he took me out to breakfast. That alone was surprising, but then he suggested a trip to the mall to pick out my Christmas gift. I rarely splurge on myself when it comes to purses or clothes, since I have a preteen son from my first marriage and tend to be more practical. My stepdaughter, however, is on the opposite end. Extremely materialistic, always asking for money or expensive items. Between her father, her mother, and their respective families, she usually gets whatever she wants. I had been repeatedly announcing that I needed a new purse, since mine was hanging on by a thread, and I decided to invest in a good designer handbag. I started saving money and browsing online, dreaming of that perfect purse for months. So imagine my excitement when we got to the department store and saw the purse right there, in stock. My heart practically skipped a beat. I explained to my husband that I could help pay for it, but he smiled and said I deserved it. He would buy it for me, although it meant he really couldn't afford to get me anything else. I was overjoyed and promised him I was fine with that. As we walked out of the store, I was practically floating. I clutched the shopping bag in awe, remembering every tiny detail, my husband's initial reluctance, his eventual smile, the warmth of his hand on my shoulder. Part of me felt as though our relationship was finally evolving in a more thoughtful direction. With that taken care of, my husband asked if it was okay to pick up his daughter and take her Christmas shopping. I had a million tasks at home, so this worked out perfectly for me to have an empty house to get everything ready. We drove home, and as I reached for my new purse, he told me to leave it. He had another gift he'd previously purchased for me that he wanted to tuck inside the purse for me to open on Christmas Day. I grinned so widely my cheeks hurt, kissed him, and practically skipped inside with excitement still surging in my veins. I was so busy cleaning and decorating those final days before Christmas that I barely had time to think about my purse or what he'd planned. But I felt a spark of genuine holiday cheer that I hadn't experienced in years. I hosted Christmas Eve at my house with my family, which was hectic, but also heartwarming. Christmas Day, I slept in, exhausted from hosting, and woke up just in time to brush my teeth before heading out to pick up his daughter and then drive to spend the day at his mother's house. I dozed off during the drive, lulled by the car's motion, and only woke up after my husband had already picked up A. We were well on our way to his mom's place. I groggily turned around to greet my stepdaughter, and that's when I saw it, my brand new purse. The one I'd been cherishing in my mind, perched on her lap as she casually rummaged through it. The sight was so jarring that I froze, my mind trying to reconcile what I was seeing. "Where did you get that purse?" I asked, voice shaky from a mix of confusion and a sudden creeping dread. The car went dead silent, like someone hit a mute button. My husband wouldn't look at me. He stared straight ahead, gripping the wheel. I asked again, more urgently. That's when A mumbled, "My dad gave it to me." I felt like the air got sucked out of my lungs. My heart started pounding in my ears. Without thinking, I shouted, "You! What?" My voice cracked with disbelief and rage. I demanded to know how he could possibly give her my brand new purse, the one I'd been dreaming of. My husband told me to calm down, which only fueled my anger further. I told him not to tell me how to feel, then turned back to A and said she had to give it back immediately. She refused, and the refusal felt like a punch in the gut. A wave of betrayal washed over me. Then, just as quickly, it morphed into profound sadness. I buried my face in my coat and cried. My husband pulled into a gas station, and the instant we parked, his daughter bolted out of the car, purse still in hand. He tried to comfort me, placing a hand on my shoulder, but I shrugged him off, telling him not to touch me. My eyes were red and raw with tears, my voice trembling as I demanded an explanation. He finally broke down and confessed everything. After dropping me off that day, he picked up A for her shopping trip. On the drive back, she spotted my purse in the car and started begging for it, guilt-tripping him with reminders of all the times he'd failed to get her a decent gift in the past. Overcome with guilt, he caved and gave it to her. He tried to say he would make it up to me somehow, but I stared at him in disbelief. How could he, when he'd already spent his money and made it clear he couldn't afford anything else? Suddenly, A called him from inside the store, asking for more money. It was like adding insult to injury. I glanced at the back seat, noticing the carefully wrapped gifts for his family that I had picked out, purchased, and wrapped with such care. Something snapped inside me. I wiped my tears, got out, slid behind the driver's seat, and sped away, leaving them both behind in the gas station parking lot. My heart was pounding, adrenaline surging through my veins. I turned my phone off, too overwhelmed to deal with his calls. I spent the day with my extended family at my cousin's house, trying to push the image of A holding my purse out of my mind. I didn't answer any of my husband's frantic calls. The only call I picked up was from my stepdaughter's mother, who'd left me a furious voicemail accusing me of abandoning her daughter out of jealousy over a new purse. I calmly explained the true situation, that her daughter had manipulated her father into handing over the purse he'd bought for me. She apologized, realizing her daughter had twisted the story, and she tried offering a solution. But by then, I was emotionally spent. I told her it was too late. The damage was done. I later found out from my sister-in-law, SIL, that my husband's brother went to pick them up at the gas station. The story came out that evening in front of his family. My mother-in-law took his side, which hurt me deeply, but his brother, SIL, and other aunts and uncles sided with me. They called out A for being manipulative and ungrateful. While a small part of me felt a grim satisfaction that she was finally facing consequences, I was too drained to care much. The betrayal still throbbed like a fresh wound. In the following days, I couldn't bring myself to talk to A. At home, I withdrew from my husband emotionally. I would cook dinner for myself and my son only, leaving him to fend for himself. He tried to reach for me at night, but I pulled away and cried silently. I felt numb, hollowed out by disappointment. I wasn't even sure I had the energy to be angry anymore. He went back on the road for work, and while I missed him in some ways, I also couldn't forget how he'd let me down. I posted on Reddit originally to see if anyone else could give me some clarity. Was I overreacting? Or did I have a right to be this hurt? The responses were overwhelming, and reading through them made me realize I wasn't alone in feeling so betrayed. Update? Wow, I did not expect this to blow up like it did. Thank you to everyone who reached out. I wanted to circle back and update sooner, but my emotions were all over the place. And I also wanted to gather more information about what had happened behind the scenes. My apologies for the long read. I have a lot of ground to cover. First, I want to clarify a few things so people don't get the wrong idea about me or the situation. I did not pay for the purse myself. I offered, but my husband insisted on paying the full amount. This is important because some people assumed I was essentially buying my own gift. He technically pays for the gifts for his family at Christmas. We have a shared account that he puts money into for bills, necessities, and gifts for his side of the family on birthdays or special occasions. However, I'm the one who does the actual shopping, picks out meaningful items, wraps them, and ensures everyone is taken care of. I often add a little extra from my personal budget if needed, but the bulk of it is from that account. A crucial detail got erased from my first post during editing. When I asked my stepdaughter to return the purse, she refused by shaking her head. My husband shouted her name, and that's when she revealed she had written her name in big black permanent marker on the inside. In that moment, I felt my rage twist into utter defeat. There was no point in taking it back now. It was ruined, or at least ruined for me. That's why I was so overcome with emotion. Some people questioned why I reacted this way only now, given my husband's history of not giving gifts. The truth is, early on, I noticed he never brought gifts to family events. But when it came to my birthday or Valentine's Day, I would handle it by driving us to the store, picking something out, and having him pay at the register. As our relationship grew, my gifts ended up being trips that I planned, which he would fund. This purse was supposed to be different. The first time I felt he genuinely picked something for me, or at least let me choose it without me having to plan every detail. I introduced one of my close friends to my husband's brother, and she's now my sister-in-law, SIL, my ally and source of inside info. After New Year's, we met for lunch to exchange gifts, and she filled me in on what happened at my mother-in-law's house on Christmas Day. My stepdaughter apparently was in full show-off mode, parading the purse in front of everyone, trying to shift attention to her new luxury accessory. The family noticed my husband arrived empty-handed for his mother, but seemed to have bought an expensive bag for his daughter. They started grilling him, and he admitted it was actually my purse. She had basically taken it for herself. Chaos erupted, with aunts and uncles scolding both him and his daughter. She ended up calling her mom in tears. When her mom arrived, she confronted my husband, demanding to know the truth, because her daughter had spun a very different story. That's when he explained how A had found the bag, started begging for it, and when he said no, she got angry. After dropping her off at home, he realized she'd taken the purse anyway. He actually left her a voicemail telling her it wasn't hers, and she needed to give it back on Christmas. Her mother, realizing her daughter had lied, became livid with her. Her mother also yelled at him for buying such an expensive gift when A was failing classes. Instead of clarifying immediately, he snapped that she didn't know what she was talking about and hung up. Only later did the truth come out, that the purse wasn't meant for A at all. The detail about her writing her name inside was a shock to him too, which is partly why he pulled into the gas station. He didn't want me to get even more upset, knowing it was effectively stolen before Christmas, so he took the blame himself. The other gift he planned to put in the purse was lingerie. I found a small gift bag on my side of the bed. The idea of him sneaking lingerie into my purse for me to find on Christmas was a sweet thought in theory, but by the time I discovered it, I was too hurt and angry to appreciate it. A part of me found it almost comical how wildly everything had blown up. Later, when I sent our pit bull Chico downstairs, wearing a red nightie, not the one he bought just to be petty, my husband was not amused. Some commenters thought the purse was the very first gift he ever gave me, but that's not true. It was just the first time it felt like a genuine surprise under the tree that I didn't orchestrate myself. That's why it stung so much. I'm not a doormat, and my husband isn't an absolute monster. Our past gift-giving dynamic was always odd. He never brought anything to family events, and for my birthday or our anniversary, I'd basically coordinate the entire thing. On our first wedding anniversary, for example, I set up a candlelit dinner, complete with beef Wellington and champagne, only for him to take an extra shift at work. The extra money from these shifts often went toward bigger trips, like Hawaii, but it left me feeling our special days weren't special at all. This Christmas purse fiasco was the straw that broke the camel's back. For once, I let myself hope he was turning over a new leaf, and when I saw my stepdaughter holding my gift, everything inside me just crumbled. When he got home from being on the road, he took my son and me to a steakhouse. Over dinner, he handed both of us gift bags. Inside were brand new AirPods. My son was confused since he didn't have an iPhone. That's when my husband revealed the second surprise. We were headed to the AT&T store to get new phones right after we ate. I was genuinely touched. It felt like a real attempt at mending the hurt he'd caused. For a moment, I caught a glimpse of the thoughtful husband I'd been waiting for. As for my stepdaughter, I still haven't had a true conversation with her since Christmas. Her mother told me she's grounded for failing classes and sneaking out, which has put additional strain on their household. Part of me feels sorry for the tumult she's experiencing as a teenager, but part of me is still reeling from her betrayal. I'm not sure how to move forward with our relationship right now. I'm writing this update from a calmer headspace. The rage and despair I felt on Christmas Day have simmered down to a dull ache. I'm learning a lot about my own boundaries and what I need from a partner. Thank you to everyone who took the time to comment on my original post or message me privately. Your perspectives, both supportive and critical, helped me process this. Even after all this, there are still moments when I sit down and reflect on how quickly the world can turn upside down in just a matter of minutes. All it took was one look in the back seat to see my stepdaughter holding that purse to unravel everything I had built up emotionally. My trust, my excitement, my sense of feeling cherished. It's not just about a purse. It's about what that purse represented. For the first time, I felt like my husband had actually planned something sentimental and thoughtful for me. I still find myself replaying the memory of picking out that handbag in the store. I remember running my fingers over its smooth leather, my heart fluttering because I knew it was something I'd enjoy for years. It wasn't simply a materialistic desire, but a symbol of how far we had come as a married couple, finally reaching a point where he understood me well enough to pick something I truly loved. Now, when I recall the same memory, there's a tinge of sadness, like looking at an old photograph that reminds you of a certain loss. At the same time, I'm aware that teenagers are prone to making reckless decisions. My stepdaughter is still learning how to navigate boundaries and respect other people's property and hearts. That doesn't fully excuse her actions, but it does provide some context. She's juggling multiple family dynamics: her mother's house, her stepfather, our household, and the constant chatter of extended relatives. In some ways, I wonder if the purse was her way of grasping for a sense of control or a token of her father's undivided love. It was still the wrong way to go about it, and I struggle with how best to address her betrayal without burning every bridge between us. My husband, for all his flaws, has shown genuine remorse. We've had long, difficult conversations, some ending in tears, others in a cautious kind of peace. One night, he confessed how it broke his heart to see me drive away from that gas station on Christmas, how he realized in that moment that he'd done something deeply hurtful. He also told me he felt helpless, watching his daughter manipulate the situation, and that he'd been too much of a coward to hold firm and say no. Part of him was afraid of pushing her away forever. Unfortunately, in trying to appease her, he ended up pushing me away instead. Living with that reality has been tough for both of us. I'm learning that marriage isn't about never making mistakes. It's about owning them and making a sincere effort to do better. He asks me daily what I need, whether it's time, space, reassurance, or even just a hug. Some days, I need all of the above. Other days, I just want normalcy. I find I'm a bit guarded now, and that saddens me because I used to be so open and trusting. As for future holidays and birthdays, we definitely need a new game plan. We'll talk openly about what's expected, maybe even set a budget so no one feels pressured or overlooked. One thing is certain: I refuse to be the one doing all the gift buying anymore. If he wants to give something to his daughter, that's his choice, but he has to handle finding it, purchasing it, and wrapping it. It's time he took responsibility for his own generosity, or lack thereof. A lighter note in all of this is that my cousin won't let me forget how I made a fast and furious exit on Christmas. She mimics the squeal of my tires whenever she sees me, and while I can now crack a small smile about it, the memory still stings. It reminds me of just how disrespected and cornered I felt in that instant, enough to drive off without a word. I've also been focusing on self-care, journaling, going for jogs, even talking to a therapist. The emotional roller coaster of a blended family can be exhausting, and I need a healthy outlet for my thoughts. My therapist has helped me see that while I can't control other people's actions, I can control my reactions and communicate my needs more clearly. That's a work in progress, but I feel I'm making strides. My stepdaughter's mother and I have been talking more too. Despite her initial fury, once she learned the truth, she realized her daughter had misled her. We're not best friends, but we're making an effort to collaborate on what's best for A, whether that's helping her improve her grades or curbing her materialistic impulses. I'm not convinced it'll be smooth sailing, but at least there's an attempt at unity for her sake. Sometimes I catch myself wondering if the purse itself is a lost cause, or if I could somehow salvage it, despite A's name scrawled inside. But then I remember the heartbreak tied to that object, and I'm not sure if it's worth the emotional toll. Maybe its ultimate value is in the lesson we've all learned: a stark reminder of boundaries crossed and trust broken. If that's the role it serves, perhaps that's enough. For anyone reading who feels disrespected or overlooked in their relationship, please know that standing your ground isn't always pretty, but sometimes it's necessary. You might feel guilt or worry that you're being petty, but your feelings matter. Communication is crucial, even when it hurts. Burying pain only allows it to fester. Letting your partner know how their actions make you feel can lead to surprising growth, assuming they're willing to listen. Thank you again to everyone who commented or messaged me after my original post. Your empathy and tough love made a difference. This has been a messy journey, but I'm learning to speak up for myself and establish boundaries. Maybe next Christmas will be calmer and more joyful. In the meantime, I'm focusing on healing and ensuring that my voice is heard. If any more twists unfold, I'll keep you posted. For now, I'm simply trying to find peace in the midst of this ongoing family drama, one day at a time.